Hey everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. This is the third video out of a 6-part series where I am breaking down basic lifts in the gym. I have made all of these videos about 3 or 4 years ago, but I have a little more experience, a little more education, and honestly a better camera now, so I thought it would be a good time to remake them. Now, if you're watching these videos in real time, I am currently on a very fun but very long vacation, which means that I cannot interact with your comments like I normally would right off the bat. So to keep the algorithm on my side, I want you to drop in the comments right now your favorite squat variation, and let's jump on into it. The main muscles recruited during a squat include the quads and the glutes, but you can also make a case for a ton of smaller muscles depending on the variation you're choosing. For example, a sumo squat will incorporate more adductors or inner thighs due to the externally rotated stance. As always, there's no right or wrong in terms of what variation you're choosing. It simply comes down to your goals and your enjoyment. Now, if you're new to squatting, here's a very basic progression I would take a client through. You honestly can't go wrong with a good old-fashioned goblet squat. Holding the weight at the chest with a little separation, you'll inhale to send your pelvis down to the floor and exhale to press the floor away. The goblet position is not only super accessible to beginners, but can also be a great challenge to more advanced lifters with proper tension and different tempo variations. Once you've mastered the goblet squat, I'm probably going to progress you to a front rack. You can use kettlebells or dumbbells, and you're going to rack them on the shoulders. I see this as a progression because you can typically hold a lot more weight, and now you're utilizing 2 different weights rather than 1. So there's definitely an added stability challenge here. Now, obviously, there's only so much that you can hold on your shoulders before it starts to feel more like an arm exercise. So that's when I typically move people to a barbell if they're interested in learning that skill and it suits their goals. There's 2 main variations of barbell squats, front squat and back squat. I personally don't love either one on my body, but we're gonna break them down quickly. The front squat is gonna be more of an upright squat and bias the quads since you're getting a lot of knee flexion, but it requires a lot of wrist extension. So many people, like myself, just find it really uncomfortable and don't include it in their routine. On the flip side, you can go for a back squat instead. This is going to be a little bit more glute biased, and we also have 2 ways to rack it, high or low bar. The lower the bar, the more you have to lean forward to counteract gravity, and the higher the bar, the more upright the squat will be. Again, I just don't love this skill for myself because it doesn't serve my goals and I just plain don't enjoy it, but that doesn't make it a bad exercise. Remember that exercises aren't one size fits all, and it's important to find the variation that suits you best. Now, there's 2 main mobility requirements I'm going to be looking for if we're working on squats: internal hip rotation and ankle dorsiflexion. Let's start with the hips. Once you hit 90 degrees in a squat, your femur or your thigh bone has to internally rotate. If you don't have that space, your body will start to pull from elsewhere like the low back or the knees, or you just might lose proper form. A quick fix here is to turn the toes out a bit more in your setup, but if you want to work on your mobility, I would recommend a 90-90 Pales rails. This is essentially where you find a 90-90 position and hold the static stretch for about 2 minutes. Then you'll try to get out of the stretch and then into the stretch deeper. This helps us not only create more and more space over time, but also more strength in the space we've created. And there's a lot of different drills you could use to increase your internal rotation. This is just one of my favorites. Now, like I said, the other mobility requirement we're looking for is ankle dorsiflexion, or a flexed foot. This flexed foot or knee over the toe position is kind of crucial in squatting. So if someone is limited in dorsiflexion, their heels will typically lift during a squat. A quick fix for this is to elevate the heels. This actually makes the whole process of keeping the ribs and pelvis stacked much easier in general during a squat. So I find that most people actually just have an easier time learning it in this position. But again, I'd always recommend working on increasing your mobility so you don't have to rely on a heel lift during your squat. So once again, I would try another Pales rails drill. Now, both of these drills are featured in various workouts throughout the Fit Club, but I'm sure you can also find some free demos online if you're interested. Now, let's talk about some of the most common mistakes I see in squatting and how I would approach fixing them. A big mistake I see is the chest falling forward. The first thing I try is elevating the heels, but if that doesn't work, I would actually try to make a little more space in the hips to see if that helps. One of my favorite quick drills requires a yoga block or a pillow. You're gonna lay on the back in a tabletop position with the block between the knees. On your exhale, squeeze into the block so your feet come out to the sides. This can create some space through internal rotation quickly so you can continue on with squats in your workout. The next mistake I see is scooping up to stand. This is usually usually a tension problem at the bottom of the squat. You get down to the bottom and then you have to like dig yourself out of the hole. So slowing down and cueing the breath along with just more awareness typically fixes this one. So with a nice even tempo, you're gonna inhale as you descend and then take a sharp exhale like you're bracing for a punch on the way up. And the cue that I like to use with clients is everything comes up together. The last mistake I see is an extreme anterior or posterior pelvic tilt, also known as an arched back or a butt wink. Both of these typically are related to hip mobility. If you're overarching your back, I would bring you to a stable place like the side of a squat rack and just have you walk down into your deep squat, keeping more of a neutral spine, and then slowly walk yourself back up. I find that pretty often this is simply an awareness issue due to spending a lot of time in that low back extension for whatever reason. So getting someone comfortable with lots of support in that deep hip flexion without the low back compensation is a great starting place. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you've probably heard of a butt wink before. This is when your hips run out of room in deep flexion, so your low back tries to make more by posteriorly tilting the pelvis. A quick fix can actually be the same drill by walking down the squat rack and taking some time in hip flexion, but there's also a great Pails rails drill against a wall that I give a lot of my clients for homework as well. This is going to create more strength in your expanded range of motion, which is really just important for longevity, so we own that range of motion that we've created. So I hope this video was helpful and gave you a little bit more confidence with your squats and how to approach them. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Fitness Lounge in Astoria for letting us film in their space, and of course, for Kevin for helping me film all of this B-roll. Again, please interact with this video by either commenting, liking, subscribing, or sharing it with somebody who wants to learn how to squat better. Hopefully this vacation does not completely mess up my algorithm, and I will see you in the next one. Yeah, that looks artsy as shit. Hey! I haven't done any barbell squatting in a long time, so let's see how this goes. I can't do this. Okay, here we go. It's my biggest fear.
Only 10.
I know. I just hurt myself on it before. I can't do this one, right? Yeah. Yeah, it hurts. I can't do it. I think that form was terrible. Hurts my hips.